Doing a little bass and red fishing. Beautiful red right here. Big old hammer. Got the net at home, of course. I grab the tail, the pole picks up the head. Beautiful red. We're putting that new Matrix swim shad to work today. It's a little bait. It's a little bit smaller than a Matrix. Like the downside sometimes in the dead of the winter. Didn't need to on this big red. He would have ate anything. But when you're catching those smaller bass, it helps. See what we can do.
Oh no, it's a big old bass. Fat daddy. It's not that cold. The dead of winter. This big chunky bass. Chaz has got the new bait. I'm still old school, you know, Matrix Shad lemon head, you know, just keeping it real. Big fatty right here. 2 pound bass.
All right. That's kind of the targeted species today. I'd rather catch reds, and we may run into more, but this is what the marsh is really holding right now, is these little 10 to 14 inch bass. And that's why I dropped it down to that Matrix swim shad. It's a little bit low profiler bait. It's gonna be easier for these smaller bass to get it down. And we just going down a bayou right now that connects the Wrigley's and Lake Catherine. It's got beautiful water in it. As you can look on the bank right here, you can see how low, just how low the water is. That water's dead low. We're coming in the main part of the bayou. This has got a lot of finger links off of it. We've tried them already, struggled in there, came in the main bayou, and it's like everything's sucked into here, bass and red. So we're just gonna put the wind and current to our back, blow down this thing, cover some ground, and see what we can do here. See that mud on the bank? You're just gonna throw it up tight to the bank, but you're gonna come down these drop-offs, and it's gonna be a really hard drop. And as you come out further, the more you gotta allow that lure to settle back down to the bottom. Because you're going from like a 2 foot up tight, all the way down to about 10 foot where the boat's at. And this is the kind of stuff that the fish really like in the wintertime, especially when you get a big front like we have today and the water gets blown out of here. Now, as you can see, this bayou's got some turns in it. This is a natural bayou. We talk about a lot of man-made bayous during the wintertime, and they can be great too. But when you find natural bayous that have good depth in the middle, with good hard edges on the side, like you can tell that these drop-offs come right off the bank. This is really good stuff too, especially when it's got a lot of duck ponds surrounding a bayou system like this. What happens is that wintertime low water, it sucks everything out the duck ponds, and it forces it and compresses everything, concentrates it into the main bayous, making it a lot easier to put a good box of fish together rather than searching all over the ponds for spread out fish. They're not spread out in the wintertime, they're consolidated. Yeah, buddy. So I'm throwing, this is the natty light color. We only have 3 colors in this. It's got a slit in the belly and these swim shads. That way, if you want to rig it weedless, if there's a lot of grass in here, you can simply Texas rig it. I got it on a 3/8 ounce GoldenEye. Chris is using a 5/16 GoldenEye. Either one's fine. And when you get into turns, it's a little deeper. Like if you were to have 2 poles at hand, I'd go 3/8 in the turns, 5/16 in the straightaways. That's naturally what happens, is your bends are gonna have the deeper water. you got to pattern these fish. Are they wanting to be in the bends? Are they wanting to be in the straightaways? Right now, they're kind of doing a little bit of both. So we're still putting the pieces of the puzzle together right now.
All right. Earlier, Chaz was I was losing the lemon head. You know, I caught a few bass on it, missed a few reds, but the new Matrix Shad was doing way better than what I was. So never be afraid to change over. But again, low water, downsize the bait, move it a little bit slower. Even with the punch train pop, you may be popping it just a little bit slower, because the water temperature right now is probably, mid 50s. When the sun comes out, it's climbing. Beautiful little marsh bass. With the opening up the spillway, again, one of the positive things to it is we're getting a load of bass, So with the estuary somewhat changing, and we're still seeing a bunch of trout, is with the estuary somewhat changing, it gives you another option to come catch some fish in the wintertime. Bass.
All right, so we were using a natty light before. It tore up on us. I caught about 6 or 7 fish. This swim shad's a little bit softer than the Matrix Shad. If you're looking for durability, Matrix Shad, no doubt. If you're looking for downsizing it some, this is considerably smaller than the Matrix and Vortex. Like I was showing, this has a belly slit right here. You get you a nice 3/0 off shank hook, like a worm hook, and a little bullet weight. This thing's deadly. We're just fishing it with an open face jig head just because there's not much vegetation in this bayou. Now you see how it tapers down narrow right there? That's built for turning it into a swim bait. I like more of a blunt top when you're going to a jig head. I'm just gonna bite a little bit off the top. It's just gonna make it fit flush with the jig head a little bit better. And it'll downsize it a little more. Like I said, we're downsizing because we're catching those 12-inch bass, makes it a little bit easier. And when you bite it, it just fits flush with that GoldenEye jig head. Good. And that's a 3/8. Like I said, Chris is using a 1/4. Now we're using a Dome Patrol. Our 3 colors in the swim shad are similar natural colors. This is Dome Patrol, like your black with a glow belly, pearl belly. We got the Moonshine, which Chris is using, which is like a purplish, sparkly top, glowish belly, and then the one I was using before, Natty Light, that's kind of like similar to that color called Monkey Milk that they make in Bobby Garland's crappie bait. So, like I said, we're just gonna throw it right up towards the bank. You're gonna just immediately start hopping it because you're in shallow water, and then as you come off, between your hops is gonna be a little bit more of a pause because you got to allow that bait to get down in that 6 or 7 foot of water. And these bass, they're tattooing it just like a trout or a red. This isn't, when you're fishing open face jig heads or bass in Louisiana marsh, you see on TV a lot of guys, they'll feel a bump and they'll say, oh, there he is. They rail down on it and hit him. I'm a big fan of fishing these kind of bass. Open face jig head, the moment you feel the thump, you set the hook, just like you do with speckled trout or reds. Let's get back to action. Little double trouble action. Chris had one. We both said got one at the same time. I said, well, let me flip the camera on. Show a little double up. He's throwing on one side of the bayou. I'm throwing on the other. Cookie cutter style size fish. Just pretty awesome. We're going to keep a few of these. These make great table fare. And I want to just show you the lure here. So Chris is using, that's our Moonshine. He's got a 5/16 ounce jig head. And I'm using right now the Dome Patrol with a 3/8 ounce GoldenEye. This little bait swims really good in the water. Very natural bait. Awesome addition to the Matrix Shad family. Nice little big trout, another one. Another one. So right behind me, you can see this ditch coming out. That's the kind of stuff you want to target, focus on, target. We're just simply going down the bayou, focusing on bends, catching a few everywhere we go, but where you can find them ganged up is in little ditches like this. Obviously, that's the kind of stuff they like. You got the water falling and pushing out of that ditch, which has multiple duck ponds in the back of it, and they're sitting in this main bayou, ambushing, the bait fish as it comes out of there. I'm just bouncing it, and when I throw up in there, it's pretty shallow in them little ditches like that. And when you get it back out to the main, you get into about 6 or 8 foot. But them little ditches like that, that's the kind of stuff they're going to be in pre-front, a little bit higher water. Add another 5 degrees to the water temperature. They're going to get back up in them ditches. You can catch them on spinner baits, crankbaits, stuff like that. A little bit more, up in the water column, maybe a little more aggressive. But after fronts, when there's just total mud on the banks, it drives them out of them little skinny ditches, forces them into the mouths of them or the main bayou where they meet. And you're just going to find them setting up out, outside that ditch. That ditch probably runs back there 7 or 8 turns. Normally has probably 4 or 5 foot of water, but when it bottoms out like this, it's only got a foot or 2, which isn't enough for these bass to really live in when it's this cold.
You saw him stretch that line? One thing you will find, when you generally find one, there's probably a million of them in there. You just keep casting, you'll miss just as many you're gonna catch, but you just keep on casting until you catch the ones you want. It's not trout, but it's just as fun. Makes number 20 for us. And just what I just alluded to, when you find one of them, it's probably going to be, a couple hundred of them jammed in there. You just stay on and work on them until that bite dies out. But by then, you'll probably have your limit of bass. Nice little marsh bass. Good and sweet, dude.
Nice one. Ooh, that's a chunk. That's a chunk, baby. Look at that black fish. That's the darkest one of the day there. Right. Hope you enjoyed this episode of DockSide TV, catching reds and bass. Mostly bass on this particular episode. Using the new swim shad. 5/16 and 3/8 ounce jig heads. That's a 5/16 there I just switched. That one's the moonshine. We're gonna be giving away some hooks, and we'll be putting some of these swim shads in your monthly bait box. Make sure to subscribe to your monthly bait box. When the trout are being tough, come catch their substitute, the largemouth bass. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for all our bass and redfish episodes. And until next time, good fishing.
That. It's as good as it gets, man. January. Middle of January. Almost February. Yeah, we're going to release him. We got our limit. Go ahead and get him back. Oh, yeah.